Bashing billionaires is gaining popularity. Bernie Sanders says they should not exist. Every billionaire is a policy failure, goes a common left-wing slogan. Some billionaires have thrived where competition has failed. Facebook and Google dominate online advertising. Warren Buffett likes firms with moats that keep rivals out. In fact, in the past 10 years, the wealth of the world's top 0.0001% billionaires has risen much faster than global GDP. Has most of the world's billionaire wealth been earned fair and square? To address this question, The Economist has drawn on data from Forbes on billionaires in the rich world and updated an index of crony capitalism. From the chart, we can see that three-quarters of billionaires' wealth in the once the economies was fairly acquired. Still, some countries are more cronified than others. For example, in Russia, billionaires' revenue occupies over a quarter of total GDP, and 23% is realized by rent-seeking, including mostly non-tech rent-seeking. In the United States, although just 16% of GDP is contributed by billionaires, tech-related rent-seeking is a third problem, occupying 4% of GDP, higher than any other major economy. The other country with significant tech-related rent-seeking proportion is China, where billionaires also enjoy an over 10% of total GDP. On the other hand, Sweden and Germany seem to have least crony economies. Only 1 to 2% of GDP in these two countries is related to rent-seeking, even though billionaires still own 23% and 13% of the whole country's wealth. Actually, today, there are four main forms of rent-seeking in the world. Firstly, the phenomenon of rent-seeking through the protection of intellectual property rights, such as patent rights, is very serious. Patents allow inventors to monopolize related benefits for a short period of time, which protects the interests of inventors to a certain extent and promotes the development of technology and culture. But in many developed countries, their intellectual property system is not so perfect. There are problems such as excessive patent protection, which restricts the flow of knowledge and affects technological innovation. For example, the United States, in technology-intensive industries, inventors superimpose intellectual property rights to form a dense network, which makes other companies pay huge costs when they use technology. This phenomenon is called patent sinkage, which makes 80% of the market value of US companies come from intangible assets, such as patents and brands, rather than physical assets. US patent holders are the biggest beneficiaries of the US-led intellectual property system. Secondly, excessive government subsidies make rent-seeking more serious. Also in the US, supporting agricultural production is a basic national policy of the United States. The US Congress will enact an agricultural bill every 5 years or so. However, subsidies do not flow to poor farmers or family farms, as many people think, but they redistribute money from taxpayers to rich and corporate farms. For example, the leader in the US corn ethanol production industry is ADM, whose executives are good at playing politics and donating a lot of money to the two parties. As a result, most of the government's financial subsidies for the development of new energy sources have fallen into their pockets rather than the majority of farmers. In fact, the situation is more serious in the financial industry. According to the research data, the five largest U.S. banks, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, and Goldman, receive a total of 64 billion in subsidies each year, which is almost equal to their annual profits. Thirdly, the corruption of the political system is an important reason for the rent-seeking. In Russia, many acts of corruption are closely linked to the underground economy and have contributed to the deterioration of the Russian economic situation. In 20 years, rent-seeking behavior is widespread in Russian society. On the one hand, it's due to the necessity of rent-seeking. On the other hand, it's determined by the privatization reform and specific historical conditions in the process of Russian transformation. Its rent-seeking is also special. The rent-seeking result is related to the relationship between government and business. The relationship between large companies and government officials is closer to the comparative relationship, and they usually have spokespersons at the federal level, which can affect the decision-making to a certain extent. However, the relationship between small and medium-sized companies and officials is not equal, and the negotiation power, the right to speak, is relatively weak and cannot affect the decision-making of high-level government. Thirdly, the formulation and implementation of international trade policies will generate a large number of rent-seeking opportunities and behaviors. In order to protect their industries, governments of various countries will impose certain tariff and non-tariff barriers, thereby hindering the free flow of production factors between different industries. With the help of trade protection policies, domestic producers can block foreign producers from outside their country, or because of the increased cost of foreign producers, to enhance their own competitive advantage. For example, in the trade disputes between China and the United States, the White House of the United States announced that it will impose a 25% tariff on 50 billion of goods imported from China, containing important industry technologies. This includes goods related to the Made in China 2025 plan. This is no doubt that with the help of U.S. trade protection policies, American companies will grab more profits. Then what should be done to cope with rent-seeking? First, for tax-related rent-seeking, governments all over the world should be prepared for crowding them to adapt. It may be difficult or even useless for governments to restrict and control every tax firm's behavior. So it would be better for them to improve transparency and supervision mechanism. For example, in Sweden, where media supervision is common, anti-corruption and anti-bribery do not only matter for prosecutors and judges, but also for all of its people. Newspapers, televisions, and other media can cover various content such as the economy, society, politics, act, and have the right to speak about and expose any social phenomenon, including rent-seeking. Additionally, Sweden was the first country to implement open government affairs in 1766, and Swedish citizen has access to documents of any government departments, including financial affairs. Swedish citizens also have the right to inspect the property and taxation of any official, even the president. Second, in order to address the problem of institutional corruption, governments need to be careful when they pass resources to private hands, especially in some countries where state capitalism is prevalent and the government is privating its state resources and state-owned enterprises, such as Russia and China. For example, Many Chinese real estate developers rank very high on Forbes because real estate development is not a perfect competitive market. It's always linked to the government power. Since the government has ownership of land, then the land auction market produces corruption and monopoly. Third, adjust the institutional structure to encourage people to shift from rent-seeking activities to producing activities. To this end, it's necessary to reduce government intervention that may cause rent-seeking, such as tariffs, courts, price ceilings, subsidies for production or consumption. At the same time, they should change the voting, election, and political decision-making system, strengthen the legal system, promote universal participation and supervision of citizens, increase the probability of discovery and punishment of rent-seeking activities, hence greatly increase the cost of rent-seeking. Fourth, make it harder for multinationals to transfer reserves overseas. Last year, 30 billion yuan property owned by billionaires in China was transferred to the tax havens. They often complete overseas reserves transfers in the form of cross-border mergers and underground banks, shadow companies, and Bitcoin transactions. To solve this problem, CRS is a worldwide standard for automatic exchange of tax-related information in financial accounts. All participant countries must implement this standard in their national financial institutions and interact, change financial account information of residents with other participant countries. Another solution could be exerting higher taxes on wealth transfers. According to an analysis by the economists, one-third of global billionaires' wealth is inherited. In the United States, Warren wanted to keep inequity and make the rich pay a wealth tax in 2019. The basic plan was to levy a 2% tax on fortunes worth more than 50 million and a 3% tax on fortunes worth more than 1 billion. According to the Post, economists estimated this tax would hit about 75,000 families and raise 2.75 trillion over a 10-year period. All in all, despite all the solutions talked about, making the economy more competitive would do more for ordinary folk than tarring all polluted cloths with the same brush.